Hey guys, Maewtt here, and we are back with more trolling on Mineplex bridges. And it's been a while since I've done one of these, and a lot of stories have happened because, winter break. And so I think I'll start off with one that took place a few days after Christmas. So my older sister and her husband got my parents Alexa for Christmas, and like Alexa is this like Amazon thing, you plug it in, ask it questions. It's basically Amazon's version of Siri. So I thought I would like troll Alexa, like troll my parents with Alexa the same way I troll my friend using Siri. And what I would do to my friend is I would like set joke reminders that would go off at like random parts of the day. So like for example, one time I set a reminder for him to poop on the floor while he was on the bus. And so when he got on the bus, Siri told him to poop on the floor. And I did that in like ninth grade. So I thought Alexa would work the same way. I would just say, Alexa, remind me to poop on the floor at 5 o'clock. And the idea would be that my mom would be making dinner, and all of a sudden Alexa would just blurt out, "Poop on the floor," or like something like that. But it turns out Alexa doesn't set reminders, and so I didn't know that. So like I kept trying, to like phrase it a different way, and like my little sister was also trying, and like we were both like just saying random silly stuff like "Remind me to pet the cat," "Remind me to punch my sister," "Remind me to punch my brother." And so after like 10 minutes of doing that, I get a text on my phone from my mom saying, you do realize that we can see everything that you say to Alexa, right? And so I'm like, oh crap. And then my little sister didn't like see the text, so she kept saying stuff. And then my mom texted me again. She's like, you may want to tell your younger sister that. And so that was pretty embarrassing, especially because my other little sister, who was with my mom, told my dad about it. So then my dad saw my immature request from Alexa. So that was fun, and now I know, be careful what I say to Alexa. I also got my wisdom teeth out over break, and I was pretty mellow on the medication. Like, the most exciting thing I did was threaten to throw the TV remote at my cat because it didn't want to sit on my lap. So sorry that there's no good story there. This next story takes place when I was about 8 or 9, and it happened in church. So, at the time, my dad was bishop of our ward, and our ward was about 200 to 300 people. And as bishop, he'd sit at the front of the ward, facing everyone. And I tended to act up in church at that age. And so, as punishment, my mom decided to make me sit behind my dad one time from the entire ward, thinking that, it'd shame me or like get me to behave better or something. Well, me being 8 or 9 years old and less mature than I am now, and yes, that is possible, I noticed that my sister and I were facing each other, and I was behind my dad, so my dad couldn't see what I was doing. So my younger sisters and I would make faces at each other because I was in the front and she was facing me. And my mom, saw that I was making faces rather than, thinking about what I'd done. And so she tried to signal to my dad, while the person was talking. She tried signaling to my dad that, I was doing stuff. And so I saw her signaling to my dad. So I was able to, stop making faces before dad saw. So, my dad would turn around. I'd just be sitting there pretending to listen to the speaker. Then he'd turn around back and then I'd continue making faces at my sister. And so my mom would signal to my dad again, I'd act innocent again. So basically throughout the entire meeting, my dad had no idea I was screwing around. And my mom got pretty mad. I got in big trouble when I got home for doing it. But honestly, the story makes it worth it. There was another thing I got in trouble for in church at that age, and it wasn't related to screwing around. Basically, all the kids who were my age would go to primary, this thing called primary, for third hour. Basically, we'd all sit in chairs and listen and sing and have a lesson. And at the end, the guys had to put away all the chairs, whereas the girls could just leave. Now, I didn't think that was fair, I thought everyone should put away their own chair. So I would refuse to, help pick up the chairs. I'd put away my own chair and then I'd walk out because I didn't think it was fair that the guys had to do everything. And I also didn't think it was fair that the girls always got to go first, whenever we got treats or something. And so my primary teacher, told me not to do that, and she told me I needed to help pick up the chairs, and I told her that the girls should help pick up the chairs. And we ended up getting into an argument. She ended up going to my mom over it. And so my mom told me I needed to pick up the chairs, but I still said, no, it's not fair that the guys have to pick up the chairs and the girls don't. And my mom got pretty frustrated with me because she couldn't, it's kind of hard to explain chivalry to an 8-year-old. And so I was being pretty frustrating, and I probably frustrated both my mom and my primary teacher a lot over that. In the end, I helped put away the chairs because my mom threatened to ground me if I didn't. I actually never grew up the idea, though, that guys should pick up all the chairs and the girls should go first for desserts and stuff. And so as I got older, like when I was a teenager, our church does this thing called Bishop's Youth Discussion, or BYD, where once a month, like all the 12 to 18-year-olds would go after church, and like it'd be a few hours after church, you'd go, and the bishop or like one of his counselors would give a discussion on something. And after the discussion, there'd be treats because, like, they want you to actually show up. And so after it was over, my friends and I would immediately go for the desserts, because we wanted, to get there first and not have to wait in the long line. And so that we get like first choice for the good stuff. And like some of the newer leaders who hadn't like dealt with me or my friends before, they'd be like the first time, they were there, they'd be like, "Hey, how come the girls aren't going first?" And I'd respond with something like, "Well, maybe they should have come right here like we did rather than stand in the hall and talk to each other for 5 minutes." And then my friends and I would take our desserts and go. We never got in trouble for it, but I could tell that they weren't happy with our lack of chivalry. Here's a story that took place senior year. So our teacher decided to like start this thing called parking lot poetry, where we take like a quote from a poem or something, or it could be a TV show or a movie, and we'd like spray paint on one of the parking spaces in the school parking lot. And so I decided to do a quote from The Amazing World of Gumball, which is Gumball talking to Billy. And I think Gumball says something like, "Life has highs and lows, and for the record, for most people on this planet, life completely blows." But that was too long, so I had to shorten it down. So I decided to shorten it down to, "For most people, life completely blows." Well, my English teacher deemed that inappropriate, so I had to change it to "Life has highs and lows." Then when we were actually like painting the quotes on our parking lot, like we actually used spray paint. So yeah, first off, our English teacher thought it would be a good idea to give like 20 18-year-olds spray paint. And, he can't watch us all. Surprisingly, though, there was only one act of vandalism that was intentional, at least. Because, what I did was, I spray painted my quote, but me being an idiot didn't look where I was spray painting. And so I ended up spray painting my quote over the number on the parking spot. And so my English teacher saw that and got mad at me. And I thought I was going to get in trouble. But then he saw the actual vandalism that someone else did. Like, they spray painted like one of their friends' nicknames on one of the parking spot rather than a quote. And so I guess he had to go deal with that. So I didn't get in trouble. Plus, my teacher knew, it was just me being stupid, and I didn't intentionally, try and spray paint the parking lot. So here's the time I almost got in trouble for false reporting at my house. Whenever my younger sister would annoy me, I'd threaten to false report her on Hypixel because that was like her favorite server, and she liked to play on it with her friends. Well, one day she ended up getting banned on Hypixel for like a compromised account. And so she and my mom thought I false reported her, and so like my mom was gonna ground me and all. I'm like, "What's the ban message for?" And then she shows me, and it says compromised account. I'm like, "Oh, that wasn't me." And so I explained what that meant, how to fix it. And of course, my sister, being an idiot, doesn't know how to change her password and show it. So of course, I had to do everything, even though I didn't false report her. But at least I didn't get grounded in the end, I suppose. Speaking of false reporting, I actually have another story about that. So, from the primaries to the actual election, there was a Democrat and there was a Republican, both of whom were like my helpers in false reporting. And I don't think they knew about each other. Like, they've talked to each other before, but I don't think that they knew like about what they were doing. So the Republican, like during the primaries until the election, and even now he still does this sometimes, he'd go on Mineplex and like go in the lobby and ask what people think of Trump. And if someone said they liked Trump, he'd be fine. But if someone said they hated Trump, or they were going to vote for Bernie or Clinton, he'd false report them. That's how he picked his targets for who he was going to false report. And my other friend, who was the Democrat, during the primaries, he asked people what they thought of Trump or Sanders. And if someone said they hated Sanders or they were going to vote for Trump, or during the election, if they said they hated Clinton and were going to vote for Trump, he'd false report them. And that's how he found his targets. So I had both of these people who were false reporting people for like opposite opinions, and I actually considered giving them each like 5 alts and telling them about each other and saying, find each other and false report each other, have a little civil war or something. I never did it though, but I don't know. I think both of them are still false reporting today. Think I should do it? Leave a comment down below. All right, so here's the story of me dealing with a social justice warrior during senior year. And there were a lot of these kinds of people in my school, but this one in particular was like, she was like extreme, you know? Well, I guess they're all extreme, but like she was more extreme than most of the people in my school. And like she even looked like a stereotypical SJW as well. Like she had the dyed hair, the short dyed hair, I may add. And, you know, identifying as neither male or female, like she was the full, like, you know, and she was an extreme feminist. So one day we were talking about high school, and like I said something like, in our high school, you know, it's easy as long as you pay attention and do all the work and do all your homework. As long as it's not like an AP class, because you know those things actually are hard. But like, as long as you pay attention during class and do all your homework, there's no reason why you should get below a 70. And in my opinion, that's still true. Like, and so the SJW, you know, gets mad. She's like, "That is the most white middle class thing I've ever heard." And I'm just like, what? And so like my dad and I, because like we were giving her a ride to school, so my dad and I both laughed at this, and I guess she kind of got mad about that. And so I was telling my friends about later in the day at the lunch table, and one of them was like, "Oh, I get it. If it was Asians, it'd be 90 or higher, not 70." And that's one of those things I just wish I thought of at the time, you know, because like that really would have made her mad if I said that. Like, I don't really consider that offensive though, because it's like you're saying that they're smart, you know. I'd love if people saw me and assumed I was smart just by looking at me, but I don't know. If someone could explain to me, you know, how that's offensive, please leave it in the comments, because I really don't understand it. And sorry if that did offend anyone. Here's an example of liberal hypocrisy at my school. As you all know, a lot of liberals think that we need more diversity and stuff. And that was definitely one of the prevalent themes of our school, you know, that we need more diversity. And one of the most liberal clubs in the school was the GSA Club, or the Gay Straight Alliance, for those of you who don't live in New York or any other state that has it. And if you look at their yearbook photo, they're one of the least diverse groups in the entire school. Like, all of them are white, first off, and all of them are women, except for one who's like a trans woman, you know, like born a guy but identifies as a woman, and then one guy who identifies as a guy but is gay. And if you look at the Games Club, which is a club I was in, we had racial diversity, we had gender diversity. Like, you know, there are two girls, so obviously, you know, that counts as gender diversity. But like, just looking at the yearbook photos, you know, our club was more diverse than theirs. And even politically it was more diverse. Like, I'm a conservative, some of my friends were liberals, some were moderate, some didn't care about politics. So not only did we have like racial and gender diversity and sexual orientation diversity, because I know that like one of the members was also in the GSA, but we had political diversity. In my opinion, that's like one of the most important kinds, because, you know, you need all types of thinking. So I just thought I'd point that out. Getting off the subject of politics, here's a good story from 8th grade. So our school kind of like, during middle and elementary school, the schools are pretty strict about language. Like, you know, they don't want kids swearing, and like you actually get detention if you swear. And so my friend and I, who sat next to each other in the back of science class, were debating whether or not the S word was a bad word. He said it was, and I said it was. And so I'm like, all right, if it's not a bad word, shout it down the aisle. And believe it or not, he actually did it. And so, like, he just randomly shouted it in the middle of the lesson. And the teacher, you know, pretended not to hear it. And so the kids in front of us, like, they didn't really like my friend. So the kids in front of us were like, Mrs. So-and-so, Billy said a bad word. And she's like, I didn't hear it. I guess she just didn't want to, like, deal with it or something. And then she just continued with her lesson. Another thing Billy liked to do in that class was take my stuff and throw it out the window, since the room was like on the second story. And the teacher caught him doing this multiple times, and, you know, he got in trouble for it multiple times. And, you know, he'd still do it anyways. I guess, you know, whatever punishment he got for it wasn't effective. And 3 or 4 years later, my younger sister and his younger sister got the same teacher for the same class in the same room. And they wanted to sit next to each other, just like my friend and I did. So the teacher put them next to each other, but as far away from the window as possible. And my little sister hated me for that, because during the summer and like the early spring, you know, it's really hot in there, and so not being by the window is horrible. I just think it's funny, you know, that the teacher remembered it, or maybe it's just a coincidence, but still, it is pretty funny. So here's the story of how I met my brother-in-law. One day, like this was close to when he proposed to her at the beginning of my senior year, and so my sister wanted, to introduce him to all of us, and so they called my parents on Skype, and one at a time, my parents would call my siblings and I into the room to talk with him. And I was last, so when it was my turn, I get called in. So I see them, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Get through all that. And I'm not much of a conversationalist, so after that, you know, I was like, there's no talking basically. And so my dad decides to try and start a conversation. So he asked my older sister if she had any advice for me was in my senior as I was in my senior year of high school. And so my older sister says, "Oh yeah, Matt, try really hard for the first semester, but once you get accepted into college, you don't have to try it all. All you have to do is just pass." And so my dad didn't like that at all. So he was like, "Thanks, bye." And then he hangs up the phone and kicks me out of the room, like, because he's big on, as you know from a previous story, he's big on grades and stuff. So he really didn't like that advice. And so because of that, I didn't actually get to talk to my brother-in-law until they got married a few months later. So the last story I think I'll tell for this video will be about the Tinder prank I did about a month ago. So it was like the first week of college, and I decided, I wanted to do a Tinder prank. Like I thought about doing this for a few months now, and I decided, hey, why not actually do it? So for some context, a few years ago, some guys, like this was when Tinder was new, some guys in my college decided to make a girl profile and see how many guys they could get to go to this tiny frozen yogurt shop at once. So I decided to do the same thing, except rather than frozen yogurt, I chose a tiny taco shop. And so one of my friends, he met with me, said he could record it and stuff. And I got like 40 guys, I think, to show up there at the same time. But due to the layout of the restaurant, we couldn't get good footage, which is why I'm just telling you about this rather than showing you the video that we took. But basically, there was a huge line of guys that went out the door, and all at the same time. They all just left at the same time because I guess they realized, that I was a fake. And so, sure enough, I checked my messages, and I got like a ton of messages. Some of them were like profane, like one of my favorites was like, "See, this is why I've lost faith in humanity a long time ago," something like that. Some of the messages were profane. Others were like, "Hey, that was actually a pretty funny prank." Like some were good sports, some were not. And so maybe, if this gets enough likes, I'll show you the messages and like put them on my engine wall. But that's basically how the Tinder prank went. Sorry that I'm not posting a video about it or like getting good footage. But anyways, there's not really enough like time left in the video for another story. So I'm just going to let it run. But thank you for watching, and please like, share, and subscribe for more.